If you've ever thought there has got to be some type of third-party funding for a small business or entrepreneur like me, you're probably right. This week's episode, Danielle Desir Corbett is joining us to talk about grants for small business owners, as well as partnerships and sponsorships that you can be pitching yourself for. And the best part is she goes into best practices for pitching and gives some really tangible advice. So it's a great listen, a great episode, and I hope that you enjoy. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Today we have someone who is like new to me, but we're already fast friends. We actually met at a retreat and we were both speaking at it and we just hit it off. Like I'm obsessed with you already. So I'm excited to introduce my new friend, Danielle Desir Corbett. She is a former grants administrator turned 4X grant funded creative entrepreneur. She curates a monthly newsletter called Grants for Creatives, which shares funding opportunities for creatives and small business owners, like grants, accelerators, pitch competitions, and more. So this is stuff that we all need to be aware of, but that probably, if you're anything like me, we are not. We are blissfully unaware. And I'm really excited to change that alongside Danielle on this episode. She is a trusted resource by over 7,000 subscribers. In 2023, Grants for Creators shared over 1,000 grants, and Danielle believes creative projects should get the funding they deserve, and she takes pride in handling the challenging task of locating those funds, so all you have to do is apply. And the reason I'm so excited to have Danielle on is because of just that. I feel like after I met Danielle at Haley Gaffin's retreat for podcasters, I was taking furious notes during her session. And then, of course, I had to corner her and be like, what? I can get money for doing what? And I can gain partnerships doing what? So we're going to learn all about that, Danielle. Danielle, I would love to hear like a little bit about your journey. And I mean, going from a former grants administrator, now you're a podcast educator, you're a coach, you do all the things, including teaching on partnerships and grant opportunities. Like, how did this happen for you?
Okay, so it's a long story, but I'll try to condense it and make it make sense. So I went to school for pretty much wanting to be a doctor who had business skills. And unlike all of the pre-med majors who were like bio and chemistry, I was like, I want to have a finance major just so that I can have all the skills needed to run my practice one day. Long story short, medicine ended up not being for me. I just couldn't do the MCAT situation. So I fell into grants administration. I started off as a financial analyst in the grants department, and then I moved into another department where I was doing the applications. So pretty much I was working with physicians, their research staff at a medical school in the city, in New York City. And I loved that job. I loved it so much. It was just amazing to see that there was so much federal or foundation funding out there to support these research projects in the healthcare setting. It wasn't until around 2020, years into my creator journey, by then I already had my podcast, A Thought Card. I had a blog. I had a pretty extensive side hustle as a creator. There were a lot of opportunities that were popping up, like funding opportunities during the pandemic. And I started to apply. And one of them actually inspired me to create a series, a financial series, my podcast. And I won a grant, and I won 2 and 3 and 4. And it was insane. It was really interesting to see. I do this for others in my corporate gig. And now as a creative person, I'm not changing lives in like that sort of healthcare way, that I could also receive funds to support my podcast. It was life-changing. I always say once I saw that I could win a grant, I could not unsee this income potential and opportunity. And I've been applying to funding opportunities ever since 2020, that stint. When I was pregnant, I had this idea that I really feel like came from my son. And one day I woke out of bed like at 3 a.m. in this just out of the whim. And I heard his little voice, baby voice in my belly. It was like, Mom, like you should do this newsletter that you've been thinking about all the time. Because I'm that person. I feel like sending opportunities is my love language. Like if I care for you, I'm going to send you what I find because I thought of you and it's a perfect fit. So, there's words of affirmation, there's physical touch, there's all those. Grants and opportunities is my love language.
You made your own.
I made my own, right? So I would send my friends all these grant stuff, and I felt like I was being annoying there's so many I was being annoying. And my little son, my belly was like, why don't you just work on a newsletter? So 3 a.m., I put everything together and I'm like, I'm just going to start this newsletter called Grants for Creators and see where it goes. And
Yeah.
if anyone is on x.com, that the Twitter platform, my pinned post is the post of me launching that newsletter. And it's always a reminder for me that, oh my goodness, like I was so nervous to create this newsletter, which now brings nearly 50% of my income comes from this newsletter
Wow.
alone. Right. And it's literally leveraging a lot of the skills that I gained at corporate, but
Mhm.
now turning that so that creators and small business owners can now find funding opportunities. Finding grants isn't as easy as like a Google search. Like when you are on Google, it is like you're going to feel like a fire hose, a lot of expired stuff, a lot of announcements, a lot of wasted time. So I have a small team where we do all that work for you. So all you can do is just look through and apply. And I feel like a lot of creators are tapping in and they're discovering like, wow, there's more funding out there than the sponsorships, digital products, memberships, speaking engagements. Like there's something else, and it's very empowering.
Oh my gosh, so many things there. What first of all, I think that's insane and insanely amazing that it 50% of your income comes from these. Like that's from the newsletter itself. That's amazing. And I feel like I love that you found a way to combine things like the newsletter, education and speaking as well as bringing in funding through outside parties and your podcast, and I know you have partnerships there. Like that's wild. So I feel like for somebody like me who and you, we've built up like kind of a large repertoire of what it is that we do. Actually, it was funny because I remember when we were talking and you were like, "Well, what do you do?" And I said like one of the 10 things I do, and then I was like, "What do you do?" And you said one, and then we said one more, and then the next one, and we just found out like, okay, we both have like 10 things going on at one time. But it when you think of it at first, like at first glance, it seems really overwhelming. So where would you tell people to start in this journey of would you tell them focus on the partnerships, would you tell them focus on grant research, would you tell them obviously join your newsletter, but what's like a good starting point to try to bring in some of that outside funding outside of their normal client work?
Yes. So the thing to note about grant funding is that it's unpredictable.
Mm,
And I feel like sponsorships can also be seen as unpredictable, but I have at least mastered where it's like, as long as I know I'm pitching
yeah.
new partners, there's always opportunities. So, similar to grants, as long as you're applying to new opportunities, there's always a chance. I would say that think about that consistency. If you're looking for consistent income and predictable income, then grants may not be the right fit. But that one time cash injection to support your business can be amazing and profound.
Yeah.
So I consider grants a one time cash injection, and it's not necessarily free money. It sounds like free money because you have an organization that's, putting these funds aside, but there are strings attached. So free money with strings attached. Sometimes a lot of times there's eligibility requirements. A lot of times there's reporting. So after you do the project or you get the funds, you have to report back. There's spending restrictions. So there are a lot of parameters and things you have to check off on the boxes when it comes to grants versus a sponsorship or you creating digital products or any other type of income stream. So as long as you're aware of that, I think that will inform your decision on what's the best approach to take. So for me, I don't expect grant funding. Like it's actually been a couple years since I won a grant, but when I see a perfect fit opportunity, I apply. And I
Yeah.
think that's a strategy I think creators can think of it is like if you see something that's a great fit, apply. You may or may not, and that's okay.
Okay, I love that encouragement, and I feel like we're so aligned in that you just have to try, and like the worst people can say is no, the worst a grant can say is no. Backtracking a little bit, I guess for those who are listening and they've never ever considered even looking for a grant to apply for, can you give us like explain grants for small business owners like I'm five? You know what I mean? Like, what does that even mean for educators, service based speakers, like people in the creative industry? I feel like we just don't even think about that. I remember in university level, we think about it a lot, but yeah, give us like a quick rundown of what even is this?
Yes, absolutely. So think of a grant as a pot of money put aside by an organization, corporation, maybe the federal government or government entity dedicated to support a specific initiative or project.
Mm.
So a lot of funders, they have this money. A lot of times it's like a tax benefit for them to have a grant, but they want to support their community and they want to support their customers, and they do that by sharing these grants with folks. So the alignment between you and the funder is very important. It's actually one of the first things I always say before you even take the time to apply for something. Make sure that you and this funder can do like a billboard test. Like if we're on a billboard together, do we match? Do we make sense?
Yeah.
So again, it's a pot of money available to support a project or initiative. And a grantor or a funder is just someone who's distributing out these grants. These grants can come from a lot of different sources. It can come from the government. It can come from individuals like me and you who are just passionate. It could come from corporations. Like right now, Chips Ahoy has a grant out there. Honeybook has a grant out there supporting creators and consultants and that kind of thing. So there's just so many different types of funders out there. But at a core, it's just money for a project or a program.
Okay, I love that. And so when people are seeking these things out, what are the types of business owners that are good fits for this type of funding?
I would say any small business owner. So there's a technical term. I think like the IRS has a technical term for small business owner.
Yeah.
I think creators struggle to see themselves as small businesses. Like
Yes.
we are so specifically looking for opportunities that say podcaster or
Yes.
coach. And there are very few opportunities that will have that specific word in
Mhm.
there. But generally speaking, we fall under the small business umbrella. So you don't necessarily even need to have an LLC for some of these small business grants. You don't necessarily need to have a brick and mortar. Sure, there are grants that cover that, but these constructs that we feel like they're like limiting beliefs that we feel like we have to have a brick and mortar, we have to have a formal LLC, and those are not always the case. So I always tell creators to have this expansive mindset where you are trying to, when you're looking at an application or a grant, you're saying, do I not fit versus do I fit? Because
Mhm.
if you could clearly see if this is not a good fit versus saying, well, it doesn't have podcasts, it doesn't have women of color, it doesn't have these words, so I'm going to count myself out. We count ourselves out too early because we don't see ourselves as creatives, or we don't see ourselves as, for example, small business owners, which we are.
Gosh, I feel like that is exactly what everybody needed to hear. Like if if you weren't listening and you weren't paying attention, go like skip back on this because you're going to need to listen to that again. I really feel like so often us as small business owners, as entrepreneurs, as creatives. I mean, I know like artists, watercolor artists, photographers, wedding planners, wedding pros, we just think like, oh, this is like a cutesy whatever. And we don't think that about ourselves deep in our core, but we hear it from outside. You know, we hear it from other people or from family and friends that are like, how's your little business? Like, how's your little hobby? And that stuff really seeps into our mind. So I love that you shared that. I think it's so, so, so important and such a great message. I would love to hear a little bit more about, I know that you do a lot of education around podcasting, around getting sponsorships for your podcast. I talk a lot about getting sponsorships as a speaker. I feel like those things are very similar, like the process is similar, but I'd love to hear from you kind of switching more into the partnership side of things. Where can people start on that? For the grants, I know they can start by signing up for your newsletter, right? But like for sponsorships and things, what are some first steps that people can take like today or this week?
Absolutely. So I recommend to make a list of potential brands
Yeah.
that you can work with, specifically brands that you love and that would be of benefit to your audience and your, whether that's like your listeners, your readers, or whatever platform that you're building. Make a list, make it, I call it my hit list, and think of even beyond that, meaning like these are the also not only the ones that I use every day, but also the other brands that you feel like are useful to your audience as well. So this could be a little bit outside and adjacent to.
Mhm.
Once you have your hit list, it's a commitment to send out your pitches. That is so important. I feel like a lot of podcasters in particular, we're waiting for brands to reach out to us,
Yeah.
and the brands may not know we exist. And the brands are getting a lot of like inquiries. So if you're not putting yourself out there, we can't expect that we're going to get picked up. I mean, maybe you can, but for me, it's very rare that some random brand lands in my inbox, even at this point for me. So being proactive, I think, is so important when it comes to whether it's the grant side or the sponsorship side or brand side, making sure you're reaching out. I think also your mindset has to be really clear when it comes to either the grants or sponsorships, where it's like rejection doesn't mean this is the end of the road, right? I struggled for so long where I would not hear a response back. I would get ghosted, or I would hear a no, and I'd be like, that's it. They hate me. I'm never, I'm just going to close up my business and cry for a day. And I missed out on the opportunity to improve my craft based off of the rejection or the feedback.
Yes.
So now I am always like, well, I ask, what could I do in the future? When can I reach back out to you? When can I follow up? And I see it as a relationship, a long-term relationship. When I first started, it was very transactional,
Mm.
where it's like, I just want the money. I just want the check, right?
Mhm.
And today it's like, of course, I do want the money and I do want the check, but I know that if I serve you and I serve you well, we will have a great relationship for years to come. So those are, I think, the practical piece of actually doing the work, but also the mindset has to be clean and on point so that you can be fruitful in your, whatever you decide to do in the future.
I cannot, I mean, I was literally like, yes, yes, because I mean, that is honestly the same mindset I have about pitching to speak, about pitching for anything. It's like, if you can just get in the rhythm of a no is fine and you should just expect the no, and a yes is amazing, but like it has no reflection on you as an individual. Just get into the process of pitching. And it's funny because I was being managed by like a partnership manager for a while, and I had told myself like, "Oh, well, it's great. It's worth the percentage. It's worth whatever just to have somebody else handle it for me." But I think deep down, part of that was a mindset like piece of it will relieve me from the rejection. And
Mm.
I mean, it was great. It was a great partnership, and I'm glad that I had it, but now I'm back to managing my own partnerships at the moment, and I'm keeping 100% of that for myself, and myself and my assistant will send pitches regularly, and I think it's just, I don't know, it's worth trying to do on your own. So I'd love to hear your best, like maybe like your top 3 to 5 tips for a strong pitch, like for a good solid strong pitch that would warrant a response and not get like that quick delete. Because I think, I mean, as podcast hosts, we get terrible pitches all the time. As a conference host for the Creative Educator Conference, I've got speaker applications out just for, actually, probably by the time this airs, they won't be out anymore. But the pitches I see coming in, I'm like, I just want to hold y'all's hands and walk you through.
How to do it,
Yeah, it's
right?
so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think of a pitch as an introduction
Yeah.
and leading with what's in it for them, the
Yeah.
reader.
Mhm.
Starting off with value and really making it clear, like, what are my thoughts and how I perceive this working out, I think is so important. I try not to work on speaker pitches, applications for grants, or sponsorships. I don't do this in a rush. I try to sit down, have a clear head. And the whole goal of this is like, how can I communicate what I would like to happen? And also make sure that they understand what's in it for them. They understand the value. And I, it took a lot of practice. Like when I started pitching for my podcast in 2019, before the pandemic,
Mhm.
I sucked. And I sucked. I literally sucked, but I also told myself I sucked.
Yeah.
So that negative self-talk, like it literally leaped off of like my fingertips and jumped on the page. And I really feel like that's a reason why I was not successful in the beginning. And then I had like, I gave up and I kind of stopped pitching for 2 years, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I today I feel like I'm so much more confident because I have a pitching practice. So I think I already give you 2 tips. So tip number 1,
Yeah.
what's in it for the reader? What's the value that you're leading with? And then tip number two is develop a pitching practice. You're not gonna like feel unstuck or feel like you unsuck if you're not practicing, right? You have to put pen to paper and work on communication and work on that clarity and conciseness. Also, pitches serve different reasons. Like, I feel like I've mastered sponsorship pitches, speaker pitches, but if you tell me, Danielle, you're gonna freelance write for this publication, write a pitch for me, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, I think, like it's, I would feel like a
Right.
fish out of water because
Yeah.
I haven't had enough practice.
Mhm.
So that's my third tip would be like, pitches, although they're fundamentally the same, you're asking for what you want. There are different approaches to the different types of opportunities you're applying for. And just be aware that you may have the skills, but may not have the implementation for the different types of pitches that you do. And then my next tip would be to really have a strong follow up game,
Mm,
because a lot of times we spend, like for me, I could spend a good half an hour writing a pitch. Also, let me kind of step back. I like to kind of outline a pitch. So I might think of the pitch like days or weeks ahead of time. So
yeah.
I kind of like know where I'm going with it. I may have a bullet pointed list of talking points.
Mhm.
And then I have a second session where I actually sit down and write. To me, it's more faster when I have all my thoughts kind of like where I know I want to go versus
Mhm.
kind of sitting and brainstorming and writing at the same time. I just feel like for me, it disrupts my flow.
Yeah.
So, but the follow up, going back to the follow up, I think the follow up is so important. There's so many opportunities that because they got into their spam folder, they literally didn't get your message. So here you are having a moment and they literally never got the message. Or maybe their inbox is flooded and they definitely want to work with you, but they just didn't get a chance to reach back out.
Mhm.
So, not taking it personally, having a follow up process,
Mhm.
and putting it on your calendar. Like, I have calendar reminders all the time that tell me follow up with XYZ person. I have folders in my, Gmail account where it's like 2024 pitches. So
Yeah.
I literally, the organization behind this really makes this a strategy versus
Mhm.
just kind of willy-nilly sending out emails once in a while kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about systematizing things because I feel like once I started doing that, and I actually kind of had to do that for my assistant because I let her kind of take over the templated pitches for like cold pitching. So if it's someone that I don't personally have a connection with or like have a friend of a friend where I can be like, "Hey, I'm Laylee," if it's like cool to come from an assistant, I tell her work the spreadsheet and we have folders and we have a spreadsheet with the date of contact, a follow-up date, like all of those things. I should probably put this template actually in my membership. So I'm gonna make a note to put that template as like a membership resource for the Educators Lounge. But anyway, that was just like
I love that.
come
We
up with
need it.
ideas while
We
we're
need
chatting.
it. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like it's just like it was one of those things where I was like, how have I not been doing this for years? But I love one thing that you said that I really want to just like double down on, and that was the fact that like this is a developed skill. It is a skill set that you develop over time. And my coaching students and clients are probably so tired of hearing me say this, but like think about what you're great at and how long did it take you to get great at that thing. You're not going to be great at pitching yourself on the first day. You're not going to be great at public speaking on the first day. These are all developed skills and crafts and like skill sets that take time. So I love that you said that. And then the next thing I wanted to just like, I wrote it down in big all caps. Don't rush your pitch. I just like, I have chills because all I was thinking of was like, again, those amazing educators who maybe applied for my conference and they were like the first 5 people to apply, but like they were so excited that they filled out the application. You could tell in the application. And I'm thinking, how much better would this pitch have been if they would have pulled it out into like a Google Doc and like bullet pointed it and refined it and really made it clear for me to read as opposed to like, I love this. Here's 15 run on sentences and a lot of thoughts that like you're going to have to sort through. And I'm like, I just got 100 pitches. I can't sort through this. Like, next. And I hate to say that because it sounds harsh. I don't mean it in a harsh way, but it's more of an encouragement of like, take your time. It's the application's not going anywhere.
It's like we talked about, like, put yourself in the reader's shoes,
Yes.
right? Put
Yes.
yourself in the reader's shoes, meaning have spaces in your email, for it visually to be appealing so it's
Yes.
not a run on. drop that bad girl into a Grammarly, into an editing software. Grammarly has amazing AI technology right
Yeah.
now where it will tell you like not only your grammar stuff, but it'll help you improve
Mm.
sentences. And I literally am like, what was life before this? So it's very helpful, right?
Yeah.
So these are all the things that I think are, it's like the pre-work before you actually sit down is like, if you put yourself in the reader's shoes,
Yeah.
that will help. I also feel like if you are in the position where you are able to accept pitches or accept, be on the acceptance side, you learn a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like I have been able to be on boards where I'm reading grant applications and I could tell the ones that put a lot of thought, care, it jumps out at me, and
Yeah.
that's why I pick them as, pick them for the opportunity versus others. So if you have a chance, definitely be on the other side so you can kind of see what it takes on the other side.
Gosh, that is such a, I like very rarely am reminded of, and another thing I say and probably like beat this to death is like, don't forget the skills that you have from previous lives, like from previous careers. And for me, that was speaker selection for university panels and speaker selection for other corporate events. And I think that really did help me hone in my pitching, but I didn't really think of it. So that's, I mean, it makes total sense. I love that you brought that up. So as we wrap up and kind of bring this episode to a close, which I feel like there's just so much that you give and people to think about, I always ask like your unpopular opinion on the topic. And for this, I'd love to ask you your unpopular opinion on just putting yourself forward for funding, whether it be for grants or for partnerships or sponsorships. What's your unpopular opinion about that the whole thing?
Ooh, I feel like my unpopular opinions live on threads because that's where I'm super spicy. But my main thought right now is that there are a lot of naysaying happening within the creator economy where it's like, if you don't have this or don't have that, you cannot be successful or
Mm-hmm.
achieve financial stability or financial success. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I call BS on all of that because there are so many creators who are quietly not advertising their success, but they're doing the work and they have amazing results, but they don't necessarily have huge like thousands and thousands and thousands of audience members.
Yeah.
So honestly, my unpopular be like, stop listening to the industry for certain things and like pave your own way, because I honestly felt like as an indie podcaster, smaller podcaster, that sponsorships may not be for me when I'm looking at the big networks and big shows. And what I had to do was develop my pitching skills. What I had to do is have the resolve to not get like torn down when someone says no to me, right? To keep
Yeah.
going. That's the crux of what made me successful, regardless of what people say in the industry. So just do you, boo. That's it. Just go make some money.
Make some money. I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, that's our little inside joke, y'all. We said that the whole retreat, like just go make some money. And I really feel like that needs to be on a t-shirt
I
for
love
you.
that so
I will
much.
buy
I
it.
love that.
No, I think that was amazing. And I honestly, as a smaller creator myself, and I'm gonna call myself an indie podcaster from now on. That was nice. I like that. I'm going to claim that title. As an
I
indie
love that.
podcaster myself, I mean, I've had my podcast for over 5 years, and I've had sponsored episodes. I've had partnerships that have included inclusion into one to three of my episodes, and I've been surprised every time. And I think I need to stop being surprised about that.
You have the track record, right? Like you have an
Yeah.
amazing platform, and there are opportunities and brands and even grants out there
Yeah.
who would love to support you, right? Who would love to be that partner. So I don't see why not, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
people say, like, why not me? And I always say a couple of things. I say, why not me? And then closed mouths don't get fed. So I need to speak up for myself. I need to advocate so that I can get what I want. And doing that, like, doing that for years and years helped me to leave corporate, helped me to build something that I had no idea I was going to build, right? So it's very powerful. I think your mindset plays such a big role besides just the doing. Your mindset does really help to move you forward.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of this incredible information. I know there's a lot of places people can connect with you. You mentioned Threads, which, by the way, Threads terrifies me. Like, I had fun there for a hot minute and then people got kind of mean. Like,
Oh, I've been on that side. It is
oh my God.
pretty. It is. It
I mean,
is.
they're not mean to me, but as a people pleaser and like I just try so hard to I mean, I am a tough love kind of girl. Like don't get me wrong. People I have a reputation for being spicy and sassy, but all of it is laced with love. Like truly I'm a softie at heart, but I will give you tough love. But I'm not going to lie, Threads just seems like less love and more tough lately.
It's I've been on that side one time and I had to like just take my profile down or like
Yeah.
just because it
I
was a
think
lot.
I
It's a
think I need to
lot.
redirect the algorithm there for myself.
But I think Threads has like a lot of opportunities to make
Okay.
connections, and it's kind of like X or Twitter, formerly
Yeah.
Twitter, but for the Threads community. And
Yeah.
I'm finding just a lot of leads. So
Okay.
I love Threads. But I think
Okay.
the best place to connect with me would be over at DanielleDesir.com. That will show you all the different projects I have, including grants for creators, my newsletter, my podcast, the Thought Card podcast. I have two podcasts actually. My other podcast is Road Trip Ready. So if you love travel, personal
Love it.
finance, road trips, you'll be able to
Yeah.
connect with me there. And I think my biggest advice again is just like just do not let not only your mental thoughts hold you back, but also what other people have to say about you hold you back from pursuing these incredible funding opportunities that are out there to support you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I could not agree more, and I love this episode.
I love this. Thank you, Laylee.